Yeah, so I mean, last time we spoke, it was 2 weeks ago, I think. And so for now, a little progress report. The progress wasn't really as anticipated. So Miran benchmarked the ARC compiler, right? Is Miran here?
Yeah,
Miran?
I'm here. Yeah, here.
And you told me it's like if the Bootstrap compiler manages to compile your program at all, then it's about 3% faster. So that's nice.
Yeah, between 2 and 3%, based on stuff I tested.
And memory consumption is about the same?
Yeah, I didn't check that, sorry.
Okay.
So the compiler is faster or the compiled program?
The compiler is faster.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's Bootstrap with GCArch and then tested on the same stuff compared to Ref C and Arc.
Okay, and on incremental compilations, the progress is my 2 tests now work that I wrote. First one is Hello World, so we compile Hello World and we change the string into Hello Universe or something, and then we check that only this part of the program is recompiled and still links and still runs. The other test is generics. So I have a program, I use 2 hash tables with strings and integers, and then I change the program to use different generic instantiations, and this started to work yesterday, I think. So it was much more work than anticipated. The major reason is that the C code generator really needs to be patched to understand how it works, how it is called by the IC compiler. And then John AD gave us an implementation for user-defined numeric literals, and I got impatient and said, and then took the final steps to finish this pull request. So with the goal that we also add a bignum library to Nim, and then bignums can be conveniently written down thanks to these user-definable number literals. Flywind has been working on. Is he here, by the way?
Yeah.
Flywind? Maybe. Yeah, well, apparently not.
No, he's here from what I can tell.
But he doesn't have a mic. Okay.
He's in the chat.
Okay. Yes, so he's working on C++ inspired shared pointers, the new channel implementation based on Mummy's work, and tasks, STD tasks, because these are the building blocks that we need for different thread pools or better thread pools. And recently it occurred to me that we can use STD tasks also for coroutines. Like people on the forum have demanded we improve the support for coroutines. This is actually also quite easy to do once we have STD tasks.
You want to build coroutines on top of tasks, or tasks on top of coroutines or CPS or something?
The way I see it, we have a coroutine implementation based on set context on Unix and the like. But one problem was like it's just code and the garbage collector doesn't really work with it. But with Arc and Orc, we don't have the stack tracing, the stack scanning at all anymore. So this is not an issue at all anymore. And but the problem is, if I remember correctly, you can create a coroutine and it's like a proc taking no arguments. And then the question is how to get data into this thing. And here I would use STD tasks to send a task to a coroutine that it should run. But yeah, that's a rough sketch of the idea. And yes, I know the drawbacks, and it's not CPS, but it's rather cheap to maintain if somebody comes along and adds the code.
So would that be like a temporary thing of like, implement coroutines that way until they get converted to CPS or whatever form it particularly takes?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that seems like a reasonable interim. I guess you need to pay attention to whoever needs to pay attention to the API just to make sure.
Yeah, well, keep in mind that the work on coroutines is old, but it was effort put from somebody into Nim, and like he ensured that it runs on all the different operating systems.
Oh, yeah. I'm not like saying new is always better or anything like that.
And the code is still in. Yeah.
API of coroutines is very simple. It's something to launch them and something to resume and to yield, basically.
Yeah, but if you want to launch a coroutine, it helps if you can pass some arguments to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's lacking, as if I remember correctly.
What is the STD tasks that you're referring to? I don't know if I'm actually familiar with that.
Yeah, so Flyman started to work on that because I told him and I think it's a good idea. It's basically, I think, STD function in C++. It's just, hey, here's a call with arguments, convert it into a task, and then I can send the task to a different thread. And then what can you do with the task? Well, you can call invoke, and then it runs the wrapped function for you. It's just function delegation, or, well, there are dozens of terms for this.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yep. Hi.
Oh, nice.
Hey, Clement.
And so yeah, that's pretty much our progress the last 2 weeks. Just today, Kleiber told me not even Hello World works if I tweak the Hello World example for IC. But hey, there's progress.
Just put the hello world in a string literal.
What does it do instead?
Put it in a constant first, then it works. But if you echo it directly, the literal, then it fails.
What does it do? It disappears?
No, it fails if you echo the literal directly, like so.
Yeah, but in what sense? What does it mean it fails?
The init procs. The linker tries to reference the init procs, but they are not generated. I suppose. I haven't dug into it.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, the init proc. Yeah, the init proc feature was implemented yesterday or 2 days ago. Yeah, any questions so far? Otherwise, I will continue with things I want to discuss. Okay. So what comes up internally for us again and again is the stale bot. We have too many open issues, and we want to close issues that nobody cares about. And one way of doing that is this bot. enhanced with even more rules, like I don't know, like the reporter reported more than 5 bugs, and we know he's still active, and we know the issues are still valid. Of course, ideally, the bot would also extract the code snippet and see if it works or not. I think we had a tool. I think it's Tissue or something.
Yeah, it's Tissue, but the problem with the old issues, which were posted before we had this template, it's basically just some people describing the problem, and that's it. With the newer issues, it's kind of okay because you have a code example, and then what do you expect and what is happening now. So it's much easier to use Tissue or manually see what's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, we can also do the work manually, like go through the 100 issues a day.
No thanks. I just went through 4 pages of issues recently to try and see what bugs I had fixed, like in regards to when I switched the parameter and the return semantic checking for generics. Okay, I had a few false positives. I apologize, but it's just like when you're going through that many, you're going to make mistakes. So I'm not really going to feel too bad about that. But that's where the idea came from. Like, if we decide an issue is important in the sense that, like, yes, this should work based on the semantics of the language that like have been agreed to, then if we can have like a version of Testament disabled, or even just a category that is like, we just don't run it normally, but we can run it before other commits just to see coincidentally, did I fix something else? Because ideally we're not doing spot fixes, we're doing like design fixes. Then we can kind of pull those in and know that those issues got solved over time. But even if they get pseudo, they could be kind of closed in GitHub insofar, or marked stale at the very least in GitHub, being like, it's being tracked as a test over here. And when it works, it's fixed, but otherwise, like, it's noise right now.
Yeah, okay. So in other words, given the amount of bugs, there is no choice but to automate it somehow. And if it's not the stale bot, it's some other bot that does something else.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, but a bot that checks if bugs are fixed is better than the stale bot, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's basically a Tissue, and I went with Tissue a couple of times through all the issues, and yeah, the problem is sometimes bot doesn't pick that you need JS backend, or bot doesn't pick that it's, you will know issue by whom, that has 3 cases that you manually switch, and then once it's problem, this next one is another problem, and the third one is default, and that default is fixed or not a problem. So yeah, it's hard to automate stuff when you have stuff like that.
So for at least issues going forward, does that effectively, like, hey, if we clean up our template or make an auto, like something that like generates the issue for you, like give it some code and it captures your like compiler options and stuff like that, and you could kind of trim them back, or at least specifies like the back end and whatever else?
Yeah, if I understood correctly, yeah, something like that would be a good idea. So if you need the JS backend, write in a comment on the first line or something like that, and maybe then Tissue won't be as useless. Well, it's not useless, it's useful, but oftentimes I go with all those false positives and check them manually and see why bot said no, this is okay, and yeah, it's not okay. So bot will report, I don't know, 50 issues that are fixed now, and of those 50, maybe 3 of them will be fixed.
Oh, okay. I mean, yes, if we can take 30% to 40% to like even 40, 50%, it's already, like, in terms of less false positives and stuff like that, it's already way better.
Yeah, it would be great.
We should probably tweak the issue template, right? To have like a flags field for each snippet, and also something saying that one should make an extra code block for each failing case, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, and basically one should be able to copy paste the issue without reading. So just copy paste the example, and it should show the failing stuff. Not that you need to enable something and read through the whole issue and find, yeah, this is case 2b, and case 2b fails, but case 1a, 1b, 2a, and 2c are okay. And that's exactly what happens in some of the issues. That's exactly.
Strongly agree, because I can't copy paste a bunch. I found like just trivially copy pasting the issue and copying it and pasting it into Playground as like a rapid like just test against nightly or whatever easily. I couldn't do that because it's like, oh, the indentation is off because like a silly when was put in front of it, and so it's like, don't do that.
Yeah, indentation is also one of the problems by the same guy. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. To conclude or to summarize, yeah, we need a better template, and we need people that are following the templates, and hopefully that will help us automate the process and make our lives easier. So we'll have maybe a bit less bugs.
Well, here's an idea from my side. How about you guys write a bot that literally checks each issue that gets added and detects whether there are test cases in it, and then just writes a comment saying, this issue does not have any test cases. If you don't add any test cases, then it's at risk of being closed due to staleness. Please add a test case. Or if it does have test cases, then just write, this issue has these test cases. It currently fails this test case, so this is a correct issue. Or it currently passes this test cases, so it's not a correct issue.
That's a great idea. Well, however, it only affects new issues when we are stuck on 2,000 old issues. So,
well, then you'd backfill it, right?
Yeah, but it might apply for the old issues also. Bot can post the same stuff. This doesn't have a example, and then if the author doesn't reply in 1 month or something, it means they might moved on because it's issue from 2016, and maybe the author doesn't care anymore.
Well, we also can like use the testament spec to write test cases and issues. But yeah, quite like not all people will be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we can also give them a tool, like here's how to like use this tool to report a bug. Yeah, so Clever says we have 100 issues closed open per month. So 1,900 issues is not that bad. Well, I don't agree.
Hello?
Hello?
I created, if you remember, I created a tool to kind of try to automatically fill the issue reports. So I don't know, maybe I'm not like trying to push the tool into the standard library, but if you find the idea kind of useful, maybe it can be cleaned and I don't know, maybe it can be added into the folder of tools of the repo. I remember I was using in some actual issues for Nim, but no one is using it, so I don't know.
Okay, to be honest, I don't remember this tool. I'm not aware of it. Nimbug, okay. Bug report tool. Yeah, well, we will have a look. It's nice.
I think the quick one in terms of the template alone is like just so it can capture some of the parameters is a good idea, or just like encourages people to write tests in a way that it's like easy to copy and paste or easy for the bot to discover. Or even the bot as like, I think it was Dom who mentioned it, where it's just like, let's either like add labels or tags to the issue saying, hey, this doesn't have a test case or something, or like if the if it can't find one in there, just so we can categorize them, and like it's an easy issue filter. Like you just filter away the label and you're like, okay, well, I can narrow down my list, because I think it's at the very least, it's the data cleansing or hygiene problem. Just when you're like, I fixed a design issue and I need to now do a reverse map to see what I could have fixed. So even like little things that help just improve the cleanliness would be a big deal. I agree with sorry about pronouncing your name incorrectly, Juan Carlos, where if we did have little something distributed, not necessarily part of the standard library, but just part of the standard tooling of like, that's an easy vector of like getting it on people's machines that can kind of help them like be like, hey, distribute up upstream, and this can help you like make sure your issue gets more attention.
In my opinion, the open issues are not like, okay, we have 2,000 issues or slightly less than that. I don't want to. Ideally, I open the issue tracker and I see not more than 5 issues that are really important for me to look at, and we don't have that. We have tags, so I can filter. I can say, hey, these are severe bugs, but as long as there are showstopper bugs, I shouldn't be looking at the severe bugs. So, this works. Like the showstopper bugs do get worked on in a timely fashion. So this part works. Whereas the other part doesn't really work that well. Like we have also, I think, low priority and then medium priority and then high priority. I renamed it to severe because what kind of bug is high priority and unfixed for 3 years, right? This is not really high priority. So we can continue this way, but as far as I can tell, people open the issue tracker, if at all, see the new bugs, and then might want to work on this on newly reported bugs. So if you have a new bug, if you open a new bug and somebody like Kleiber comes along the day motivated to look into it, the chances are that it gets fixed are much higher than if you reported this bug 2 months ago. But it's the same bug. It's just 2 months ago is I don't know, 5, 6, 7 tabs away in this issue tracker, and so nobody really notices. So the problem is in prioritization, and of course, if you have much less bugs open, then it's kind of easy to prioritize. And it's obvious that you don't miss an important one and things like that. So,
although to be fair, bugs that recently had activity are probably like generally more severe because they might be blocking people. So that's why they get activity.
Yes, and also newly reported bugs might be easy. So a bug that is kind of old and hasn't been fixed for 3 years, the chances are greater that it's just very hard to fix, and you might spend a week digging into complex recursions inside the Nim compiler just to be able to figure it out, to figure out the problem, and then you need 2-3 more days thinking about how to fix it. And then you fix it.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Huh?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
And then after you fixed it, it's of course not green, like some other test cases, then red, and you're like, hey, yeah.
That's exactly that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, and it's not clear to me. Like this is I had prepared something for you. where is it? Like we can. We need to fix these issues. We need more aggressive refactorings, in my opinion. Prime example that I keep bringing up is the type graph. It's just type generic inst of a type generic body with shit inside. Even if it works, nobody can comprehend these graphs. So, and of course, it also will fasten will speed up the compiler if we just get rid of this. So, however, we need to plan this, and we need to like last week I did this massive code generation, like here this pull request, where I was like, hey, here is how to do this, and it's much simpler this way. And now this touches just one subsystem of the Nim compiler, namely C type generation. And every like as you can see on the CI, everything is red. But in principle, it's much better. Like in principle, if only somebody picks up my work, there's a chance here that the code gets simpler in the end. And then once it's simpler, it's easier to fix bugs, of course. So this would be one example, like C type generation in the C code generator. The other example would be, as I said, the type graph. Or the recording has stopped. Okay. And yeah, so how do we, I don't know.
So this is, I think, what I mean by like kind of fixing design bugs. Right. I fully admittedly, like a lot of my fixes have been like kind of point fixes and did slightly improve things, but it's mostly been around like, okay, mostly working within the same structure, kind of fix it along. I think that some of the difficulty with design bugs is, as you pointed out, it's how do we turn red to green is one of the issues. And then the other one is it's a little unclear in some areas where there'll be certain edge cases which you'll break, right, along the way. Like you'll have to give up on just because it's like, oh, well, based on the logic of this, it actually does not make sense to, that may have kind of worked before, but it really never should have. Yeah. And those sort of judgments are they're not easy to make or even necessarily identify. And I think that's, at least for myself, like where I've been running into, like, when I've been thinking about like, well, how would I clean up, say, the type system? And I've been like, okay, well, in my opinion, I think you and I probably agree with like the number 3 or 5 or whatever could totally be a type. It's not necessarily a value. Like depending on where it is, it can be a type. Like it makes sense to me. But is that, and it works in some places already, but if we made that pervasively work, it probably also might change certain semantics and certain like code somewhere or the other. And like part of that is like, well, that was unspecified, and I'm glad it worked for you before, but it's not going to work for you again. Like figuring those sort of things out, or those sort of bits out it's a little difficult. And the RSC process, like unless you have like I mean, in the most largest and complete sort of sense RFC, it's difficult to do. It's almost like you need to kind of propose like the logical system as code, like your text, and then kind of reason about that. that's at least been sort of the struggle, is like a written spec is not as good as an executable one, and then the RFC process is a little difficult for that.
Yeah, well, the RFC process is also really not about compiler refactorings, and but I'm personally willing to say this is Nim version 2. We cleaned it up. You can port your code in the next 5 years, and that's just the story there. Because even like usually what happens is, hey, I have this bug fix, and with yet another, with just a single switch added to the compiler, I can keep the old behavior, and so people can keep compiling. But that used to be my opinion a couple of years ago. But nowadays, I think no, just change it, and hope the important packages don't break, or if they break, hope that the fixes that they need to apply upstream is not too bad, because it's just, I mean, Nim is open source, so we also need to care about the source code quality of Nim itself, and not just about the fact that, I don't know, I can still compile code that I wrote 10 years ago. I mean, to compile to code that is 10 years old, I can use a 10-year-old compiler of Nim. I mean, because it's just too expensive. Just imagine we add a switch for every breaking behavior. I mean, that's kind of what we do right now, but who knows these switches? Who cares? Like, who can follow this? Jadanico says, yeah, I know that for bigger project, it's tougher to switch, but but the same thing is, here's the new Nim version. So in other words, yes, I know, like updating your compiler is expensive. Like you need to run your tests again, you need to see what changed in behavior, and that's true already for Nim, even though we try our very best not to do it this way. So the cost is already there. So we might as well say, hey, let's embrace it and say, yes, it's Nim version 2. Yes, it doesn't support this type desk quirk yet that you're happy to exploit, but it's for the better. And you need to plan a migration period for your code. But this is Nim version 2, and we are convinced this is the way to go forward. And it's a valuable strategy. It does work. Like you can look at Lua. Lua is at version 5, I think, or Swift is at version 4.
There is a counterexample with Scala, which has done this and gotten a really bad reputation because they break a lot of major packages very often, and so people now have an aversion to Scala because they're afraid that even the minor version will break everything.
Yeah, see, so it doesn't help.
Well,
right. So they create the minor version, and yet it's just that even the minor version is so expensive that they might as well switch to the next major version instead. Right? No.
Well, people.
I mean, there aren't that many things we can, like big breaking changes we can do, right? I mean, there's not that many that we can't put it in a 1.x release, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So we can just like we can't do those big refactorings or big changes all at once, anyways. So if we spread it out over, I don't know, a few years, which we couldn't do any way other, because we don't have like enough devs to do all the big refactorings at once, then it probably is better for the ecosystem, since the ecosystem also evolves over those years and can adapt.
Yes, I mean, there are not too many good solutions around, I'm afraid.
I think, I mean, one of the Nim from like a user programmer perspective, like there's a fair number of things like kind of left implicit. If we, for example, say like in a few weeks or months or whatever, introduce like the concept of like, you know, take this code and output a desugared version, and then, you know, when you have that breaking change, you can output a desugared version, and that like lets you say, maybe it's not just even desugared, it's more than that, but it lets you like do some sort of comparison of like, yes, roughly speaking, at least like, you know, it didn't, if, for example, if we're making type system changes, it didn't like, you know, interpret your implicit parameters like one way or another. Like if that sort of thing's changed, we could give people like diff tools to like rapidly identify, you know, oh, in this part, your code's not going to work the way you expected it to work anymore. Or we can do things to kind of lighten the load a little bit. And honestly, even for ourselves, it could probably just help testing like the impact of a change. So there could be just subtle improvements or testing facilities that would be just useful for a compiler developer, that then making it available for someone who's trying to migrate a code base. It just might make their life easier, just like rapidly detecting like, oh, wait, okay, here's the bugbears. I can start with these.
Yeah, I'm not.
But that assumes that Nim 2 will have all the features of Nim 1, right?
Well, I'm not even necessarily presupposing entirely Nim 2, right? Like, I think the first thing is like enabling. So if the discussion is like, okay, what if we had a Nim 2, and not necessarily let's only fixate on being at Nim 2, but let's instead focus on what are the things that would happen if we tried to go there. And then, you know, as people pointed out, there's a bunch of breaking changes, and we, you know, have semantics that worked before that don't work now, or they work slightly differently. So if we put Nim2 aside for a moment, and we realize that those are the issues that will crop up along the way, then we can kind of go, what are the capabilities that the compiler or the language or whatever, or tooling or whatever it is, that would allow us to kind of evolve through that path while keeping the migration cost along each step like cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So if there's some sort of like, hey, here's like maybe a desugared comparison, because that helps compare semantics, that's something we can introduce, and then when a certain class of breaking changes comes along, it's cheaper.
Maybe the solution is yet another branch. Like, for now, we have the devil version, but the devil version is kind of stuck with 1.x. Like, we know the devil version will be 1.6, and it will feature many org fixes and IC, and that's the current plan anyway. But then, of course, like, Timothy cannot merge his highly experimental stuff. So, and I cannot merge my CodeGen refactoring because it breaks important packages, even though maybe like it's so what happens is we have pull requests, and they are like, they cannot be merged, and if we had a branch where it's like, hey, this is I need a word for this, like the Nim experimental, like, or just the Nim refactorings or whatever, and Timothy gets to push his stuff in there, and I get to push my CodeGen refactorings, and Flywind gets to put his new STD modules in there, and then
that would be worse, in my opinion, because like
maybe
different slightly unfinished refactorings, if you merge them all together, I think we will have a very broken thing in the end.
Yeah, I mean, then you need to say this is now super broken, and you need to plan like next 6 months for making important packages to get into shape again.
I guess my point is, if you merge all those refactorings into one, it gets harder to like get it up to a working state again, because there's so much different code involved in that, and not one person can understand all of it. So I think that's why I think it's better to have it in a PR branch until it works.
And backporting stuff or forward porting stuff will be really a mess.
That's a good point. Yeah.
There's a question in the chat about management of issues.
The management of issues in stable is one concern. The future development of adding features is a different task. Aren't you mixing the two and making it harder to manage? Yeah, certainly, I guess. So does the community have a vision of what features should be implemented in Nim? Well, I have a vision. I'm not sure if the community shares it.
I'd be happy if you want like to get some of that written down, like because
I'm working on it.
Or, like genuinely, not just simply like I'm asking you to write that down. Like if you want, like the writer's block is a real thing and stuff like that. So I'm like happy to like if there's like a draft and I can like provide clarity or suggestions or write parts of it and be like, hey, is this what you were looking for? It would be kind of nice to help move that along. So this is not a please do it faster, but
I know. But last time you said it would be the Zen of Nim, which is completely different in my opinion.
That's a slightly different thing.
Yeah.
I have a question about the custom literals PR. There's this is positive thing, right? But does it do anything? Because
I fixed it already.
Oh, but I mean, even with the PR merged and it was still like flipped around, but the values were still correct for negative int literals, right?
No, like the logic affects negative literals that are in binary or hexadecimal or octal.
Oh, okay. I didn't look at it too close. Thanks.
So okay. I'm still open for suggestions. Like we want the big refactorings to happen, and we know it costs time and effort. And so one way, of course, is to keep doing it the way we do it right now, which is here's a refactoring. You are allowed to merge it until as soon as all the tests are green.
I think it's best that way because of course, it's annoying to get all the tests green, but I think long term it's better to have a branch where the tests are green and and I mean most of the time it's kind of easy to rebase in my experience, so it's not that big of a deal.
You mean like the bit rotting problem is not real?
Yeah.
Or I think bit rotting is a real issue, but
is bit rotting? So I have encountered it before in the compiler every now and then, just even over fairly short lifetimes, but I don't have enough experience with it. Are there certain parts that tend to bit rot faster than others, like changes against certain modules?
I think
library bit rots faster, I think, as opposed to the compiler.
So I know my fixes against SIGMatch bit rot very quickly.
Yeah, SIGMatch is a beast. Okay.
and also, since 1.4, I probably touched like 50% of the lines in the compiler just to add this ID generator parameter everywhere to get IC2 into working state. So this was also a major refactoring, and of course all the old pull requests don't work because they are now missing this parameter. But and I know from Timothy that he has a couple of pull requests that are simply broken just because of my work on IC. That is, because it was very.
I do understand that, and there may be a few things that we can do to kind of help reduce the bit rot. I think for some of those pull requests, if they're kind of susceptible to it, I mean, partly it's the receiving code base and the state it may be in, but it's also like sometimes indicative of like some of the design issues that that are in the PR itself, like, or they're perpetuating, that are causing like that basically make them more prone to failure. I've seen some of the features that kind of Tim has put together, and like, I mean, they're not always like something I may agree with or even disagree with, but it feels like there's often an issue around the way informal reasoning for those work, and I would not want to. I mean, I would be hesitant about merging some of them too quickly. I guess case in point would be the non-type witness version of the whole like iterators and all that, and being able to pass them. Like, I can understand why that might have a lot of bit rot, but it's also one of those things where it's like that doesn't feel like the right design approach.
Oh, you mean the everything is a first class symbol PR?
Yeah. Which is close, like it's really close, but it's also something I don't think I wouldn't hasten to merge it, because it feels like there's a few like key semantics that would be messed up. Like, I know it's the common example for at least you and I, Clever, where it's like the whole like, is this generic or is it nullity generic? And there's actually a meaningful difference in a few cases, and those meaningful differences like really, really matter in those edge cases. And that sort of stuff is super important. And I don't kind of put that in the same category as like some of the IC work, which doesn't necessarily, like, it doesn't affect the semantics of the language as much.
I think the features laid out in the PR or enabled by that PR could be enabled if we make templates, like allow templates to be passed around. But of course, it has to be like, we have to be very careful with that.
Like,
but one thing that already works is like passing static procs around, like static proc parameters. It kind of works, but it's largely untested. Like, I added one small test case to it, so it's probably more of an accidental feature. But I think if we expand on that, we get all the features that the PR enables, and for like in my opinion, less semantic overhead, if you want to call it that, because we have less features and they enable the same things, and it integrates better with the rest of the language.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's the usual dream. Only a few features that work well together and giving you a tremendous amount of power.
But of course, having like a kind of untyped or typed param for procs is interesting, I guess, or at least, well, it it leads to interesting design questions. So I think the PR is good just for letting us think about that stuff.
That is true. I didn't give it enough credit there. I go back to that PR and kind of think about things. But I'm like, okay, wait, how would I approach type witnesses? Because it's something I come back to. I'm like, this would be handy here and there. And so insofar as that PR exists, it's still a very good thought experiment.
Yeah. I have to go in a bit, so okay. I'm saying goodbye and probably will leave in a few minutes.
Same here, actually. But one thing I wanted to bring up, which is related, is that semantic versioning for Nim is just nuts. Like we have the Nim language, okay, and it gets new features, and sometimes stuff breaks in subtle ways, and usually when that happens is because of a bug fix. So usually it's the bug fixes that people might depend on which break somebody's code. So in semantic versioning, it's like, hey, major version is just a number, minor version is features, and then patch version is the thing you can just increment because this is just a patch, right? What can go wrong? Well, in Nim's case, it can go wrong that your code stops compiling, whereas string utilities got a new proc inside. Nobody cares. Like, this is a feature addition. Feature additions are not problematic. I mean, of course they can be, but usually they are not. So the priority in Zemware is new features, dangerous, and then patches are just pick them up. But this is not correct. It's fundamentally wrong. And a bug fix is a change. Like, okay, there are fixes like the compiler crashed and now it doesn't crash anymore. So obviously nothing worse is now happening. But aside from that, a fix is a change. You change the code, and that's much harder to foresee the consequences of that than merely adding stuff to existing things. So Zemware is a completely broken idea, and it's even worse for Nim, which is a big project, and we have the standard library, we have the compiler, and we have the language specification. 3 different things, and 1 version number for everything. And not to mention the other problems. Like if we want to announce Nim version 2, it's because we worked on this very hard and it has lovely new stuff inside. And Nim version 2 does not mean, hey, it breaks everything for you because it's not Nim version 1 anymore. Like, there is a communicating aspect in these version numbers that are completely not in line, like they are not matched by how Zemware works. Maybe we are so proud that we want to name it Nim version 2. How about that? And then Nimble goes ahead and says, you specified that you need Nim version 1 up to some infinite patch version. It's bad. So probably the next Nim, like, okay, 1.6 and the 1.x line is the way it is, but eventually I will say it's Nim 2021.
I think at least for the compiler, not the standard library and so on, I have not seen it. This could just be my own ignorance. Apologies, but it would be nice, like, to put sort of the spec, it as we understand it, sort of for whatever version. So like 1.6, 1. Whatever. And those are the tests as we understood them, and then being able to like run those tests against, say, a future version and being like, does that still work? It kind of is It's probably the only amount of reasonable guarantee we can provide.
Yeah, actually, that's kind of like it works for C++, right? Like they have a language specification and they work on this very hard. And then here's the C++ 2020, and then the compilers try to catch up with the spec. And
I would rather maintain them concurrently and like so on, but just in terms of like you could take, especially if like test or refactoring or whatever, if we can take like the 1.4 or and like run it against like a future 1.8 and be like, hey, does that still work, or did something like break? Or if we maintain them kind of concurrently, but just effectively like we encode the spec as best as we can along the way as tests, and then we that's how we say, okay, that's the level of guarantee that can be provided. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't follow.
So I think we should basically have the spec as a series of tests, like whatever it is right now. We kind of just build it out, and then from then on, like we can extend the spec, sure, but someone can run the old version and be like, can I like, does that still conform or obey the spec as it was? And if it doesn't, then we know it's a breaking change.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be acceptable, it might be fine. It's just, that's kind of what you have to deal with.
Yeah, I like that. Yes, okay, but what does it mean in practice? I mean, we have tests, right? We have plenty of tests.
It's true, we do. But I think between refactoring the tests and so on, it's that has concerns. But from a perspective of someone who's, say, trying to work on the language or trying to change some part of it, they know like, okay, here's how the spec is broken down. This is where I would like add new stuff. And if I'm deleting or changing some existing part of the spec, that right there is indicative of like you're changing the specification around where the language works, and like that's the first early sign of this is a breaking change. Or you are specifying some part of the language that was not specified before and is going from a implied I will work to a I will work.
But don't we have that to some great extent, because the tests have categories? So if you work on overload resolution, there is test/overload that you can run first, because they are green, ideally also on your local machine, and you change it, and this is how I work. So I don't run the tests. I run categories, and then the CI runs everything.
Oh, I run everything.
Really?
Okay. I have a stupid machine. So yeah, I have a Threadripper.
But what is true is that we have plenty of tests which are like, hey, I test this subtle C++ integration with emit statements, which is not part of the language spec. Right?
Wherein I would like to have like a category, like clearly identified test, not necessarily category, but clearly identified test. Like this is specifying like this feature and this very like minute part of it is supposed to work this way, or we are purposely not testing this because we haven't figured this part out yet. And so the spec is encoded there, and right now we do have some coverage of it.
Yeah, we do.
And then we have some regression tests, and it's like, well, this regression test, sure, it fixed a bug, but I don't even know if that makes any sense.
And how would you see the role of the specification then? The specification refers to the test suite as like a benchmark, or like a conforming Nim implementation needs to pass these tests.
This is what we are saying Nim definitely is. And if it's not here, we are either saying it's not that right now, or we have like it's unspecified. And that lets us just understand like, oh, especially going back to the earlier conversation of refactors, and like it might break a few things here and there, at least there's a very clear test to kind of go like, oh yeah, you know what, we're out of spec here. Like we are genuinely out of spec, or that was unspecified. Like you're relying on it, but I'm sorry, we never kind of made that guarantee. It's clarifying or encapsulating the public contract, if you will.
Okay, I like it. That's a good idea. I think Ada also has that, like there is this, like the conformance testing or something to see if an implementation is conforming. Or at least Ada had it first and then C++ got it too. Actually, does C++ have it? Who knows? Yeah, it's a great idea. Let me write it down.
Yeah, I'm good when I'm looking at either the convergers or the type stuff. I haven't picked where I'm going to end up, but this weekend I'm probably going to be looking at some of the macro issues that came out of the CPS library, because one of them has caught my attention. But yeah, my intention was just to be like, look at the manual and like, kind of like every sentence, see if I can, for like whatever I'm working on, make sure it's like covered and described. Like, this is what we are trying to show. It's captured in this test, which is like, has a clear name and some exposition describing what the heck's the point. And build up that. If other things break, be like, sorry, this is a spec and this part isn't, and that breakage should be okay. Or if nothing breaks, even better.
Yes, okay. I have to leave now.
Same.
It was a pleasure to meet you guys. We'll probably schedule the next meeting in 2 weeks. But of course, like, feel free to continue, but I have to go. So bye-bye.
Thanks, Iraq.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah, I'm also. I have maybe
Bye.
5 minutes. So if you want to continue without us. Anybody?
No, I have to go as well.
Yeah, I think that most people.
Okay, then
It's fun to hear. It's fun to hear the core developers talk about what's on their mind. I think we succeeded there.
Yeah, but we would also like to hear from you guys more. So not only that I see, I don't know, 30 microphones with across them, so nobody speaks. So hopefully in the future incarnations of this, more people will talk. That's my idea, at least.
Well, I can always advertise my system libraries I'm writing, so I can do that, but no one asks, right? So I do not know what the etiquette for this kind of stuff is.
Yeah,
and also
please.
in addition to that, the problem is always that, like, if there's so many people, and in particular also with the inherent latency, you don't really want to start talking and then, or rather worry that, everyone starts talking at the same time. And, I don't know, it's just difficult to feel like, okay, I really have something to say that is important enough, so I'm just going to go for it,
Some people are shy too. I'm not afraid to just yell at Iraq.
I've got a question about the stuff that's been raised in the chat that's been quite interesting. I think there's a lot of issues come up in there, a lot of technical ones that I can't say I completely understood. But there's lots of other things about SSL and management of issues and all that sort of stuff. Are they going to get picked up now and carried forward to other calls, or is anything going to be done with them? Or is it more just sort of talking about stuff?
No, that's a hard question. Yeah, probably when you bring something in the chat, it might get our attention now, but we cannot promise. Yeah, you just write here, and yeah, that's our top priority. So, yeah, sorry, I cannot promise anything, but some of those stuff, yeah, we will look into it.
Again, from my perspective, and it's probably because I've not found the right page or whatever on the website. But what is the structure of? I know Arif obviously does the coding and created Nim, but is there like a core team that works with him, and then is there a structure of people who look after the issues and stuff on the issues log? I mean, does that sort of stuff exist, or is it more free for all, open source community with sort of just a very loose structure?
I think it's more of the latter. Well, I work with Arak on some easier stuff. Flywind is now joining us, and Flywind has done some great work in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I'm not sure, but yeah, mostly the labels of the issues and stuff. I know that Jordanico did lots of those. It's community based, so you cannot just think, yeah, somebody else will do it because there's tens of people that work on him. No, it's I don't know, maybe 2, 3, 5 guys that are really working full time on it, or maybe in their spare time, and others are just community members that are willing to help. So if you can help with some of those issues, be our guests.
Yeah, it's sort of knowing where to start, isn't it? Or you don't want to, well, personally, don't want to go stepping on doing the wrong thing or stepping on someone's toes or not realizing someone's already looking at something. I suppose that's what I struggle from, is knowing where to even start or what I can do.
Is there a wrong thing you can do?
Find something that looks interesting to you and then ask on IRC. There's usually, like Moran said, there's a few very prolific contributors, and that will point you in the right direction. The Nim community is very free for all, but it's also, people usually are helpful. But you do have to ask. Yeah, it's very informal. You just have to
basically scratch your own itch. If you have something that bothers you and you see the issue, or there's no issue but you have a problem with some part of Nim, just try to work on it. And if you are stuck, as Raymond said, just try to ask on IRC, or if you use Discord or whatever, ask there, or Telegram, and somebody will help you.
No, that's good. Thanks. It's just nice to see so many people turn out to come and listen. And then sad to hear that we're struggling with so many issues and things. But, you know, it's sort of something in the middle, isn't it? I think that's needed to join the two together, perhaps.
Well, we agree.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's Nim's problem for a long time is that there's a lot of people who are interested in. I mean, I'm guilty of that too. So we're interested, but we don't ever fully commit to being able to actually literally commit code. It's good to see there's a few new people though, like Sam and XFly.
Yeah,
stepping up, which is nice.
Yeah, but I think it's people come and go. Now it's Simon Flywind. Before it was, I don't know, Lemon Boy, or
that's true.
Yeah,
there's always like there's like 2 people who are core right now. I mean, you and Arak have been around forever, and then there's kind of a rotating group that comes and goes and tends to contribute for a while and then leave.
Yeah, it feels like that, but I think this is natural and expected. You cannot expect somebody to work on Nim for free for 10 years and don't burn out at some point.
True.
No, I think that's fair enough, and it's natural, isn't it, that people move on, get different interests, and will want to go and explore different things. I don't think that's a criticism by any means. It's just the way things are. But I suppose having a structure and understanding allows other people to sort of fill in and step in and sort of know how things work, I suppose. That's what I was.
Yeah, exactly. I think the most of people came to Nim because of those reasons. You moved on from Python or whatever, and you stumbled upon Nim, and then you got stuck here for hopefully a couple of years, not just a couple of days.
So, no one is talking now.
I don't know. I think the Nim ecosystem, right? The bugs and stuff. I think that's normal, right? Like everything that's happening to Nim is normal. It's the same thing that happens to all the other open source projects, right? You have a couple of few core people and we have a bunch of bugs that don't get closed, right? I don't know. It seems pretty normal. I wouldn't stress out about it.
Okay, so we don't do anything and we claim it's all normal and that's it.
Yeah, just fix the bugs. Like
That's
the same
what
way
we're
you're
fixing
doing, right? When they come up, you don't need to like, oh, we need to close the bugs. We need to have them less of them so we look better to people that are browsing GitHub. I don't know. I think it's fine.
And also, in particular, if you have a project that's big and that only has like 50 open issues, then you kind of know that's probably quite dishonest, at least in my experience.
But there is, 2 orders of magnitude between 50 and
I know.
600.
What I mean is like the other extreme isn't better. In my opinion, it's worse. So, having many issues is just, well, I don't know. To an extent, it's natural. And of course, a language that is in a way as small as Nim is, also from a commercial standpoint, is expected to have more issues that are still open, and particularly that are old than, I don't know, some other language that has huge corporate backing, no?
Yeah. Is Dom, are you trying to say something?
So my microphone flash, huh? I was just gonna say, like, I don't think it's just a case of we want to have this low number of issues. I think it's about prioritization more than anything. Because when you have this many issues, it's hard to know which of the old ones people are still fighting. So I would personally vote for the Stalebot again, but I know that this isn't a popular take, so.
Yeah, last time we got really lots of angry comments about Stalebots, but before I forget, what you told is certainly a thing, and the other thing is I think that we might miss some new important issues because people see, there is an issue 5 years old, nobody fixes those, why would I report a new one? And that's what I'm mostly afraid, not that we have 2,000 issues open. I'm afraid that people might not report stuff because, it's too much.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, we could have a system where it just closes stale issues, and then if people are still like worried about it, they have to like reopen it and just say that, and we'll close it. It's like, hey, closing because of stale. You still have an issue. Reopen.
That's exactly what Stalebot did, and everybody hated it.
Yeah, people get mad. People are they act like it's their baby. I don't understand why. But people are people.
Did the Stalebot contact the people and ask them if they still wanted to keep it open, or did it just assume?
Yes, exactly that. You had, I think, 1 month to just reply, just write a dot, that's it, and it will stay open. Okay. You can write ... it will stay open.
Well, that sounds fair to me. If there's no response, then there you go.
Okay, maybe this time we will have more luck with Stalebot, if or when we introduce it again. And I now really have to go, otherwise you will hear a lot of background noises from my end, so I think it's better for me to just leave. So goodbye, guys, and please continue, and see you next time.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
So will we talk about anything else?
So, Wiremoon, is there anything you seem interested in contributing, and I want to encourage you? Is there anything else that you want to know, or anything more specific?
No, not really. I was just generally interested in, how things were structured and who did what. I'm a hobbyist programmer, so I don't work in software development for a job, so a lot of it's unknown to me. I expect people who do development and play with Nim on the side as a hobby, carry that sort of professional stuff with them as well. So they already have that sort of base knowledge and understanding that someone like me wouldn't necessarily have. So yeah, it's just curiosity, I suppose.
Yeah, that's fair. That's all true.
Some stuff is kind of easy to get started, like documentation or web design, some stuff like that, maybe.
Yeah, you don't have to dive into, fixing the macro system or something crazy.
There'd be little chance of that, I can assure you.
Yeah, Vaimons, I also really like your English accent. Like, it's very clean.
Thank you.
You just instantly sound more intelligent to everyone else. Advantage of geography.
I'm actually in Wales, which obviously is in the UK, but
it's always fun to see an international community.
Yeah, it's nice to hear all the different accents, isn't it?
Yeah. And Welsh is sexy even in the UK, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Nim does skew towards Europe though a lot, right? If you look at I think on my GitHub repos I can see who's visiting them. There's like a thing, and it's almost predominantly Europe. It's kind of better.
Although I was talking to Miran. I was talking to Miran, and apparently Discord has a large percentage of people from the US.
No, it was me. It was me.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. Yeah.
I'm not sure why, but like in the Discord server analytics, there are 26% of people on the Nim Discord server who are from US. But it doesn't mean they are right, just that 26% of all of the users who are on the Nim server. A lot of them don't speak at all. They just read.
Well, us Americans are just lurkers, I guess.
Yeah, also, there is, if someone doesn't know, there's this month with Nim, in Nim, series of blog articles on the Nim blog post, and if you have some project you want to show off, you can submit it to Beef's repo, and then he will make it into a monthly post.
Yeah, they're always good to read and see what other people are doing.
This is the link.
Honestly, a really good way to help Nim is documentation and blog articles, casual. Yeah, the marketing stuff. Like that's.
Do you think there'll be another conference this year? Because I really enjoyed watching the videos and stuff on that last year.
That's a good question.
I think that having some nice landing page is kind of important for a project too.
I think there was some talk, but nothing official yet. That's a good question to bring up when with Miran and in Iraq.
Yeah, I expect it takes quite a bit of organising and time, doesn't it, to do? That's the thing.
Yeah, well, that's Miran's job, though. He's technically
okay.
Yeah, he's actually, his official job title is the Nim community manager. So
right, okay, makes sense then.
I think he's the only employee right now, other than Iraq.
Flywind as well, I think.
Oh, Flywind is now? Okay.
Yeah.
They have 2 people on staff.
That's
Fancy.
good.
Yeah, some people also get bounties on doing some work like CI or videos like Ilone. He makes Nim videos on YouTube.
Yeah, there's been quite a few different things on YouTube, isn't there, over the time? And I know you've been doing your live streaming as well on Twitch. You were doing that at one time. That was interesting too.
Well, watching live programming is usually not very interesting because it takes some time. It takes time to write code.
Yeah, the banter's always good though.
So anything else you want to talk about?
Are you just eager to leave because you're stuck recording?
No, I'm just because it's like no one is talking and it's like this awkward silence.
We all like listening, you know.
I'm also sort of working. I'm listening in the background. I'm trying to understand that CodeGen PR. Tasks is a... Part of me thinks the tasks PR is unnecessary. I think, Dom, you might agree with that too, but it's useful, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I just question basically everything. So, but I mean, I was satisfied with the answer I got. To be honest, I think from that perspective, I think they said that it's just exposing what the thread pool needs. So, if someone else wants to implement their own thread pool, they will need it anyway. So that's good.
I mean, that's sort of the idea behind CPS also. It's sort of that building block that you can use to build different things. These are all related concepts that are slightly different. The PR, though, looks like it's just kind of a small wrapper around C++ function, which is funny.
Yeah, treeform about binary lang. It's more of a like you write a parser definition with what fields you expect of what binary size, and then binary lang creates a parser, serializer and deserializer for you automatically. So it's not Nim objects. Like, I mean, it's Nim objects, but you have to define the schema yourself.
Okay, so kind of like the JSON parser that we have, the two macro, right?
Yeah, I guess you can check it here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I parsed a lot of binary files. I have the TTF parser. We have all the various image formats for GIFs. So I've been, I don't know, kind of declaring sometimes is really hard because there's a lot of stuff that you just like want to skip. Like, I don't care about all this binary crap. I just want to get to the meat of things.
Yeah, binary lang is really good for that. You just define like the schema and it will just parse and serialize as you need.
Right, guys, I should get going. It was fun hearing everything, all the conversation. So hopefully see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye. I'm going to drop off as well. Speak to you all again soon, hopefully.
Yeah, nice to meet everyone. See everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, I guess I'm leaving as well.
Bye.
Yeah, goodbye.